So, folks, it's another week of our lives, and that means yet another Hearthstone AMA. This time around, talk of a new minion type or even types on the way to Hearthstone, a deep sea expansion, some conversation around the balance between control and aggro decks, and lots more stuff to get through. That said, let's kick it off with some standard format chat here. Last question for today. First question for us. Wow. Has the team ever considered a deep sea expansion? Murlocs, pirates, Naga, mech submarines, sea monsters, N'Zoth. And Iksar says, yes, underwater sounds refreshing. We'll make waves overflow with excitement. So all water puns. But yes, we've done some exploration on deep sea stuff. Maybe you'll see it someday. That maybe you'll see it someday for me is like 65% confirmation that it's like already in the works. They usually don't tease stuff like that unless it's going to pay off somewhere down the road. So maybe the next year and a half, we could see an underwater expansion, because you know what everybody loves in video games? Water levels. They're everybody's favorites. That said, there's a lot to play with in Hearthstone. I guess WoW had like Nazjatar or whatever. Is that what it was called? In Cataclysm, like underwater area that people I think liked okay actually in Cataclysm, but we'll see. Yeah, maybe we'll get a Nazjatar water expansion. So next up is, will there be a new type of minion in the expansion to come? Knowles, for example. We have new minion types in the sets we have in test. Types, that's more than one, and they usually have 3 to 4 sets ahead of the current set. So I think in the next year, basically, we might see 2 new minion types coming to standard is the implication here, because this does say expansion, so it doesn't seem like we're talking about battlegrounds. He says no guarantees on which will have a minion type and which won't, though. Sorry. So maybe even one next expansion, kind of based on that, but probably not. Probably sometime in the next year. But I'm all about minion types. I thought actually Quillbores were a nice little addition, even for just, you know, a few minions here and there, just playing off N'Zoth. And clearly, if there's like an entire one built specifically as a new minion type, we might get some cool new synergies. I think was Elementals the last one that really came along as a like a complete set with like a mechanic, the whole last turn aspect. Maybe so, but they were certainly a welcome addition as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so this question's a big one. Has Hearthstone decided to abandon control and combo as viable strategies, instead preferring that matches be some form of mid-range versus mid-range matchup? I got a lot to think about this one. Iksar says no, but combo control decks tend to have harsher negative reactions when they are the most powerful decks in the game. We try to be cognizant of not nerfing all the decks players complain about, because if we did, we'd eventually end up in mid-range versus mid-range forever. Yeah, it sounds like they're not exactly pushing towards control and combo decks based on that wording, but not necessarily actively avoiding them. That said, when you look at HS Replay these days, and I noticed this week while trying to play like a real deck in my Tryhard series, check it out. Great Tryhard series of videos. The only real control deck that was in the first 3 tiers at Legend was Priest. You could play Priest. Everything else wasn't even really mid-range. It's mostly just aggro. You could probably call Death Rattle Demon Hunter mid-range in good conscience, especially the ones running N'Zoth and stuff. That definitely feels like a mid-range deck, but most of it's much quicker aggro decks. I think Elemental Shaman falls in aggro. Certainly the aggro Doomhammery variant. You got the really fast spell mages are pretty much an aggro deck. You got Face Hunter, of course. The rogues play like aggro decks. So Hearthstone's very aggro-y right now. I think it probably has been, frankly, for a while. And I think if I had to guess, my insights are that Blizzard probably wants faster game times on average. You don't want games to last like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Because people need to have some reliability that like they can sit down and play a game and it's not going to take like 30-40 minutes, which of course control versus control can do. That said, for me personally, I love control matchups. I want 22-minute games. Those are the best for YouTube. the best, most exciting content, the best for stream because it keeps people locked into the stream for longer. So selfishly, give me all the control decks in the world. But for the record, I don't actually think a mid-range meta would be a bad thing. Those tend to be the decks that kind of feel the most pure or true to the old days of Hearthstone. They feel the most honest often as well. So I don't know if that's a bad thing. Next up here, a question about dodging nerfs to shadow spells. We saw 2 holy priest spells nerfed. Maybe there were some thoughts they weren't nerfing shadow spells like Raise Dead to protect Shadow Priest with Dark Bishop Benedictus coming in Stormwind. Confirmation though from Alec Dawson, fellow Hearthstone dev, no dodges for Shadow Priest. They thought the change to Renew would have the biggest effect on their overall generation count from game to game. Wanted to make sure we lessened that. So they're basically saying Renew was more generation than Raise Dead. I don't know if I agree with that. I think Raise Dead probably generates more cards. But Renew did come off of Wand Maker. So you had this like Wand Maker into Renew chain that arguably kind of, and of course, Raise Dead feeds into that by giving you more Wand Makers. So there were some crazy chains there. So sure, Renew is definitely going to lessen the generation if it stops being played. Oh, and speaking of Priest here, question about Shadow Form being upgradable like it used to be, where if you played it twice, it would start dealing 3 damage instead of 2. With Benedictus and Shadow Form coming back, they changed that, I guess, in the core set now. Shadow Form just changes your hero power. It doesn't upgrade with a second use case. Alec Dawson confirms, as of now, no plans to change that back to its old version. We prefer simplicity in the core set. We'll definitely revisit the topic when we finalize core set 2022, though. So maybe there's some hope if you're looking for a start of game Benedictus that you can then upgrade twice, I guess, to deal maybe 3 or even 4 damage in the future. I don't know if that'd be crazy OP or not. It might be, but could definitely fuel a Shadow Priest archetype, certainly. So this question's a little confusing, but it's really about whether or not you should be able to discover or perhaps even randomly generate legendary cards. So this has come up a little bit where it's like your opponent plays 5 Soul Mirrors and it's supposed to be a legendary card. They're only supposed to have 1. And will that be limited so that legendary cards aren't discoverable, essentially? Iksar says, we talked about it, but I think the real answer is just to make less random generation and discover cards as opposed to limiting the pool. And I actually agree with that. I don't have a problem with legendary cards being played multiple times. Legendaries by design aren't really supposed to be stronger than other cards necessarily. They're just supposed to have more unique effects. So I don't think it's a power level problem. Perhaps, if you think legendary cards deserve this really special place where they're big and momentous occasions and playing them 4 or 5 times is less momentous or makes them feel less significant in some way. Sure, that's an argument, but from a power level standpoint, I don't think getting multiple legendaries is necessarily a bad thing. So I agree, just lessen the randomness and generation aspects, and multiple legendaries is fine. All right, so here's a quick question about classic mode potentially getting updates, like reliving the old expansion growth that happened in Hearthstone, so adding Naxxramas, then Goblins versus Gnomes, etc. Iksar says, we talked about it as a possibility on launch of Classic. This is a good reminder. I could see doing it as a Classic shake-up on rotation day or perhaps the last expansion of the year. We'll discuss with the team. And I don't know. I mean, I'm curious what people who play Classic mode actually want. I think there's certainly some value in retaining the experience, that pure Classic experience that people want to go back to. I'm sure some people just want that forever and are happy to have that forever. There are others who are probably going to find it stale pretty soon. Myself, I found it stale almost immediately. I think I would probably hop back in if they added in different little expansion metas over time. That would be fun to revisit each of them for a few days, a week, or whatever, but I'm not going to stay in the same Classic meta over and over again forever. So I'd be up for this one personally. I think it would be a cool way to relive the history of Hearthstone, much like what WoW Classic is doing with Burning Crusade out. So sign me up for this one. So now a quick question about wild format. Will they ever buff older wild cards? Stuff like Kalamos, To My Side, or Arcanosaur that have underwhelming power levels but could maybe be cool if you buffed them. And Iksar pretty much just shuts this down immediately and says, no, I think the upside would be minimal We want to keep tabs on the Wild meta to make sure nothing is ruining the experience for everyone, but the goal for Wild isn't to inject change just for the sake of it. And I gotta say, philosophically, I kind of agree with that. Wild format is this just playground of everything, and trying to like curate that playground feels needless to me. Like, there are just going to be cards that get forgotten. And I mean, if you buff Kalamos or whatever other pet card you love, there's going to be another card that falls away, and there's going to be 100 more cards somebody else loves that don't get played. So it's just kind of like this impossible task that you're never really going to solve. You're never going to make everybody happy. So yes, of course, it's sad when, a large part of any given expansion is unplayed and perhaps forgotten. But there's also, economy concerns. You start buffing cards, making them good. People have to craft more stuff. The more the meta changes, the more expensive that gets. So I like Wild having a little bit of that stability where when you make a deck, there's a good chance that deck's going to stay pretty relevant for a while, even with the addition of new cards here and there. Many of the same archetypes seem to dominate in Wild over time, and maybe that gets stale. I don't play a lot of Wild, I don't know, but I think a lot of people appreciate that economy aspect of Wild at the very least. So I'd say keep cards as is. All right, so here's a quick one on adventures, wing-based adventures like Blackrock Mountain, League of Explorers. Are those coming back? Are we going to stick to the sort of Book of Mercenaries style stuff? Iksar says those are not coming back anytime soon, but we are considering it for next year as we plan what the live content team will be working on. So as Book of Heroes and Mercenaries finish up, what's next? Perhaps they're going to go back to some wing-based adventures. And, I'm not like the biggest solo adventure fan, to be honest. I thought dungeon runs were really, really cool. I would frankly love to have dungeons runs back, although you kind of have some competition with duels now in this sort of dungeon run aspect. I would like new dungeon runs all the time. Not the biggest fan of adventures, not the biggest fan of Book of Mercenaries. They're fine. I played through them right, but they're not what really hook me. So I'm not looking for this, but if you're out there and you like adventures, chime in, let us know, and maybe Iksar will read your comment and be encouraged. Okay, so the final few questions here are basically about cosmetics and things, systems and such. Solemn, good friend, asks, thoughts on purchasable game boards, playing fields, and an editor for existing ones so we can create our own board with the four corners being clickable stuff that we can change. Cool ideas. I think actually even Runeterra has done some stuff. I think I saw today they had like a single game board you could like change the colors out of and stuff. Maybe it's just like distinct game boards you equip, but at least thinking about the customization side of things. And Iksar says, purchasable game boards currently being investigated, but currently only for Battlegrounds. Early stages, I could see doing constructed boards, but there are some complications that make that difficult. Second part of your question we refer to as a UGC feature, which stands for user-generated content. The answer is we'd love to do it. It's just an enormous feature that requires an incredible amount of effort. I think the place we'd start with user-generated content is cards. I actually didn't read that until right now, the cards aspect. So I wonder what they mean by kind of customizable or edited cards. I guess maybe they mean just like in Runeterra where there's like different hero skins for champions / legendary cards in Runeterra. You can get like different skins. I don't know if that really seems user generated so much, but if they're talking about an editor and cards, I don't even know. What do you guys think that means? I didn't prepare a thought on this because I didn't read it until just now. What does that look like? What does it mean if you customize a card? I mean, surely it's not like changing stats and stuff and building your own cards. There's all kinds of balance and problems there. But as far as a cosmetically customizable card, maybe just changing colors or backgrounds, or I don't even know what that would mean. Maybe it is really just a skin and not quite so customizable, but my brain is spinning. Let me know what you think that could actually indicate. So a question here about tease us with some cool new features we should be excited about. Iksar says, try not to tease stuff with the intention of getting people hyped. Plans change. That has certainly happened before. Tournament mode. But he does say outside of normal new content like sets, the team is heads down trying to make Mercenaries as cool as it can be. When we feel good about that, we'll have more of a chance to plan other features. So they just talk about Mercenaries like it's just sucking up everybody's time. And I think it's going to be enormous. There was a tease in some article or interview or something where they said it's going to be the biggest thing Hearthstone's ever shipped. So much bigger than even Battlegrounds. the survey that leaked or whatever had all this tease about like a town that you manage. It seemed to have a lot of the like mobile game trappings like Raid Shadow Legends and all these other ones where you have hero rosters and a town and upgrades and all this stuff. Hoping it's more like, I don't know, like Darkest Dungeon Town. Not quite so, gotcha game, Raid Shadow Legends kind of stuff. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I think it's going to be something like that. It's going to be big. Who knows if it's going to be good? It doesn't sound like it's going to be all that much like what we know for Hearthstone. So I am beyond excited to see Mercenaries, and I have not seen a thing. I don't know if they've showed other content creators anything or not, but they have not talked to me about Mercenaries for a single second. So I have just as much of an idea as you guys do what it's going to look like, what it's going to be. Certainly getting pretty excited though. So speaking of skins and cosmetics and Mercenaries, Alan here asks, does the team already have plans for skins and cosmetics for Mercenaries, or is it too early to think about it? It seems too early to me. We don't even know what would be skinned or cosmetic. We don't even know what it's going to look like hardly. Iksar does say, though, loose plans. We're focused on gameplay and out-of-game systems right now. We'll have more details on that stuff around release. Now, that out-of-game systems, I think he means stuff like the sort of town that was teased. So game being like an individual match or run or whatever. And the out-of-game system being like the town or the supporting features, the character level ups or whatever it is, right? I don't think he means like out of the Hearthstone client. So I don't think he means like leaderboards on the website, but he could, I guess. There's a lot of support that happens outside of the client itself to make things work. So leaderboards, card libraries, all that sort of stuff. So it is intriguing, at least, though, that, all this other cosmetic stuff for Hearthstone came around years after the fact, right? Like getting diamond cards and alternate coins and all this stuff, battlegrounds boards, whatever they're talking about, took forever. We got hero portraits, right off the bat, I think it was practically right off the bat, very early, regardless. Everything else taken forever, but they're already thinking about baking in cosmetics for Mercenaries. So this sort of alternate monetization is thought about right off the bat. And that's potentially encouraging because it could mean Mercenaries won't be so aggressively monetized from a currency standpoint or just a real dollar standpoint. So it may try to be prioritized as a cosmetic monetization as opposed to gameplay monetization. And, Battlegrounds has a little bit of both. It's got Battlegrounds perks, which is sort of a primary monetization, but it's primarily free to play. Anybody can just go in. You don't need cards to support it as much as, say, normal Hearthstone. So I don't know where to land. Will it be, do you need to spend gold? Do you need to have a collection? Do you need to unlock heroes? Do you have to upgrade your heroes with some kind of alternate currency or unlocking more versions of them like a hero grinder? God, I hope not. That'll kill the mode. Or, is it just going to be like, hey, buy this skin, and that's really the only monetization? I guess we'll see. I'm going to guess some balance thereof between the two, but excited to see where that goes. And then one final little cosmetic aspect here is the reason the hero skins from duels and solo adventures were never added to standard. The skins are cool. Seemed like a good idea to port them over. We're considering having them as rewards for adventure achievements when we eventually get those in. The skins don't all have the work we normally do, though. Full voice lines, hero frames, etc. Would have to consider doing that work or shipping less full heroes. Well, I'd be fine with heroes that were less full, personally. I don't emote and stuff anyway, so for me, it's the picture, the JPEG, that matters the most. I just want a pretty little JPEG, unnerfed JPEGs, preferably. So I'd be fine with that. That said, though, if we keep adding hero skins, we have to get a random hero button. We have the random card back. It's amazing, right? I love going into each game, seeing what card back I got, kind of reliving old ones. I don't want to have to manually select heroes and play the same one every single game. I have like 14 shaman hero portraits. I want a button, so one day I get Rag, one day I get the Roll, one day I get the lightning dude whose name I never remember, one day I get that little Murloc dude. I want to be surprised. I want to have a variety, because otherwise it feels like you're just never using 99% of the skins that you've paid for or unlocked or earned or whatever else it might be. And they've teased that's coming, but we just never hear more about it. So we got to get a random hero button sooner rather than later. All right, and that wraps it up for AMA number 49 million, whatever it was. Thanks as always to Iksar for dropping the knowledge and spending his time and risking his sanity interacting with the Hearthstone community. Always greatly appreciated. If you got thoughts on these, or if you're frustrated, if you love it, whatever it might be, share those in the comments below. Always enjoy reading your takes out there. That said, thanks for hanging out yet again. Thanks for watching, and until next time, game on. GG Hadid, what's up?
Yeah.